Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ryan Derby. I'm the Emergency Manager for the County of Humboldt, and right now serving as the Emergency Operations Center Director for the Knob Fire. As you can see here on this map, we still have 3 zones that are in evacuation orders, and 1 zone up to the north that's in an evacuation warning. Our expectation is that everyone residing within these red zones, the evacuation order zones, are to leave immediately if you haven't done so already. And if you're in the yellow zone, that basically just means be prepared for evacuation because there is active fire in the area. Over here on this map, this is our most recent briefing map from the Knob Fire with the Incident Management Team 5. You can see here that the fire is currently at about 52% containment all along the 299 corridor. And it's actively moving in this area around Butterfly Creek, though there is some direct fire suppression efforts happening from the personnel on the ground there. The fire is currently at about 2,179 acres, and the winds right now are pushing this way to the southeast, which is favorable for Willow Creek. There is a little bit of concern in this area here in the north, though they are fighting it directly, and we're hopeful that that'll have a good result. Over here on my left, we have what's called CalTopo. This is a live stream of hotspots from satellite imagery with an overlay of the wind pattern. So you can see here, these red spots, that's heat imagery or projected fire. And area concern right now is on the northern edge of the fire, as well as the west over here. So we currently have deputies out in the field that are patrolling the evacuation order zones, working with CHP to staff road closures, and in coordination with the incident management team on the ground, provide us updates in the EOC, or Emergency Operations Center, so we can take that information and push it out to you publicly. In the Emergency Operations Center, primarily we're focusing on public information. We're coordinating with the Red Cross on their sheltering efforts and providing logistical needs as necessary, both to the personnel in the field from our department and to the Red Cross if they have any needs. We're also staffing a phone line at 268-2500. If people in Humboldt County have questions about the fire, have questions about what the Sheriff's Office is doing or the Emergency Operations Center is doing, please feel free to call us. And if you have questions about what the Fire Incident Management Team is doing or the efforts on the ground, you can contact the California Incident Management Team 5 at 530-628-0039. So I do want to briefly touch back, if I can figure out where my maps are, on these evacuation order zones. We've had a lot of inquiries the last couple days around our Restricted Area Access Pass program. That program is still in effect, though in order to gain access, it has to be deemed safe both by fire personnel and by Emergency Operations Center command staff. Right now, that has not happened. And in order to gain access, you first have to notify the Emergency Operations Center at 268-2500 to get pre-approval to go into that zone. You cannot go up to a roadblock, show your pass, and gain entry without getting that prior approval. If you have questions about that program, please contact our office, again, at 268-2500. We can give you the information you need to get access. Though that program is specifically for commercial cannabis that has either county or state licensure. It's for traditional agriculture, and it's also for commercial livestock operations. So that program is not intended for fire suppression efforts. It's solely for the maintenance of crops and tending to animals. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Steve Madrone for his update.
Supervisor Madrone, you are live, but we can't see you.
Yes, there we are. All right, technology. Thank you, Director Derby. Appreciate it. What I mainly wanted to say is that, folks, please stay safe. You know, this is complicated stuff, and I know everybody's anxious to get back in. We're working with the powers that be to see if we can get some of these areas that are now seemingly safe, although that determination has not been made, to be able to lower the standard so that it's not a mandatory, so that people can get in and do important fuel reduction work, etc. I know the Willow Creek Fire Safe Council has been trying to help landowners and others, but I just want to caution everybody, please, you know, follow the directions. Let's all work together, and we can keep everybody safe as well as get the work done. So that's my main comments. Appreciate everybody working on this. It was really great out there at Friday Ridge yesterday to see the huge influx of crews coming in to mop up, to put out hot spots, to contain the fire. Thank you to everybody that's been providing the resources to do that. And we absolutely want to be working with the community, but we've got to be very careful because people's lives are at stake here. And so follow the directions. Contact me if I can be of any help. And you can find my phone number and email on the county website. So that's mainly what I wanted to add today, and appreciate everybody's help with this.
All right, so now we're going to open it up to questions from the community and from local media. I believe we opened up for email in or messaging questions, and we'll take those at this time.
Okay, so reading off the list that we have so far, let's talk about structures that are currently threatened. Do we have a number of structures threatened or numbers of homes destroyed?
So at this time, we don't have, to my knowledge, any homes destroyed that have been reported to us. We've heard rumors of one outhouse in this region here in the central evac order zone. And we don't have exact numbers of structures, but primarily structures along the 299 corridor here, with some spattering of structures within the evacuation order zone.
Where is the most of the fire activity happening right now?
As I mentioned earlier, if we look over at this map here, you look at these little red spots and these red circles, we're seeing the primary fire activity happening on kind of this northwestern portion of the fire, as well as the western portion of the fire. And what's particularly concerning is up here, there's a ridge top. So if that fire reaches the ridge top and starts kind of slowly going down that hill, there is potential for it to run up that hill and potentially down that valley there. So it's really important right now in the Willow Creek area, you are in an evacuation warning zone. Take that warning seriously and recognize that there is still fire risk out there. And we'll update you as soon as possible if we hear any updates from the field.
And a lot of people have been wondering, how did the fire start? That isn't determined yet. Is there anything you can speak on that?
So right now, there's no determined cause of the fire that's coming from the incident management team. From what I understand, it's still under investigation. I don't have any further details on that.
So a lot of people were wondering about the containment jumping to over 50% in 24 hours. What enabled firefighters to make such significant progress, and what do the next 48 hours look like?
So the first 24 to 48 hours of this fire, we're basically pulling resources from the Monument Fire out east in Trinity County, and from the McCash Fire, which you can't see on this map, but essentially up here in the Siskiyou area. The first day, I believe there were 59 personnel assigned to the incident, and within 48 hours, that number jumped up. So they were able to pull in resources, get those resource requests filled, get additional personnel, additional equipment out there to protect that 299 corridor and put some containment lines on the fire.
So another thing that was really big, yesterday we saw some concerns from the community regarding community members jumping in to fight the fire in evacuation order areas. So I'm just going to read this question here. This comes from the Times Standard. On Wednesday, the Sheriff's Office asked community members to refrain from interfering with firefighting operations. However, community members previously expressed concern that there were not enough resources on the scene. There are reports on social media, people fighting to save their homes. Can the Sheriff's Office speak to this?
So our job in OES and in the Sheriff's Office is to protect three primary things, well, four really. That's protection of human life, protection of property, environment, and cultural resources. So we don't take the decision to put an area into an evacuation order lightly. It's a very serious thing. It displaces people from their homes. And the primary reason for that is the protection of human life. So when we say it's time to evacuate now, that is to protect you. And once you leave your property, you cannot go back in. And that's for your safety. And we highly recommend that you take those orders with consideration.
I'm going to, Supervisor Madrone, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that conversation?
No, I think Ryan covered that pretty well. I'm assuming, is this being recorded, and would it be available to those that maybe weren't able to tune in right now so that we can put it up on our website?
Yes.
Great. So that would be at the sheriff's. Can you tell us where people would go to find that?
So this is going to be posted on our Humboldt County Sheriff's Office Facebook page as well as our OES page, and I believe it's going to be available on YouTube as well.
Great. Okay. And then, am I muted or am I? No, I'm still unmuted. Yes. Okay.
You're unmuted.
Okay. Great. I've had a lot of comments from the community, like you said, where people are wanting to help. And when we say they want to help fight the fire, I just want to be really clear. I don't believe anybody's trying to get out on the front lines and fight the fire per se. What they were trying to do was put in some fire line on private property out in advance of the fire between Willow Creek and the active fire area. But I totally understand how dangerous that kind of thing can be. Mostly what people are trying to do is get in and chip up a lot of down debris that many people have been spending the summer limbing up all the trees around their homes, right, in their homesteads. But they were never able to process that material because you couldn't burn. Burn season ended very early this year. And so the only way you get rid of that so it's not fuel, if the fire decides to come that way, is to chip it. And what I saw down on Friday Ridge was a completely burned out landscape. No real activity there. They've got that area very much under control. And I believe that's a big part of the increased containment that's occurred. So once again, I look forward to the reevaluation of sites and the ability to drop back to a warning stage so people can safely get in, if appropriate, to be able to process some of that dead material and make sure that they're safe, right? So it's a real balancing act here. And again, mainly I want to encourage the community to be safe, follow the orders, be ready to leave in a minute's notice. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Along those lines, Ryan, I actually have a question for you now. How can community members get wildland firefighting training so that they can help?
So the best way for community members to get wildland firefighter training and to get involved in future firefighting activities to contact your local volunteer fire department. You can contact the U.S. Forest Service to see if they have routes for you to get involved. But there, to my knowledge, is no spontaneous volunteering for wildland firefighting.
And there's just questions about signing a legal waiver and whatnot to help with firefighting efforts. That would have to happen, afterwards with our fire chiefs associations and whatnot, correct?
Correct, yes. They would have to receive that training, go through the correct process, and then go through that traditional pathway.
Okay, we had a question about the Panther Road area. I know you talked about it yesterday in our talks with officials. They're talking about possibly trying to do a back burn in that area. Did that actually end up happening, or are they still working on that?
So they did do some, they cut some dozer line up in this area here. Actually, it may be easier to look at this map because you can see this kind of black X'd out area is where they cut some dozer line. And right now they are doing direct suppression efforts in the Panther Creek area and the Butterfly Creek area, but that's also where there's increased activity today. So right now, I can't say this with 100% certainty, but there's about a 50-50% comfortability rate with their efforts over there right now, just with the wind and the activity of the fire. But we're remaining hopeful here, and as we gain more information, we'll be certain to push that out to the community.
And there have been some questions just about the mapping products that OES has been putting out as far as looking up if the Bigfoot subdivision is in a warning zone of certain streets. Can you just explain how the map works?
Yes, so it's not on this map, but I believe, I don't have it up, but the map that we use that's created in here is utilized using Google Maps. So you should be able to go into the search function and type in your address, and it'll put a pin drop on where you are within that zone. So if you live in a given area in the evacuation warning zone, it'll show where you are in relation to the orders. It'll show where you are in relation to the fire, and you should be able to get up-to-date information on that as it relates to the orders that we have in effect.
And then can we just touch on Humboldt Alert? Someone called, said they got a late notification from one of our Everbridge alerts, which is probably just self-service issues, but will you quickly talk about that for us?
Of course. Sometimes when we send out Humboldt alerts, it cycles through, and when we're sending out, a couple hundred SMS texts essentially at the same time, it takes some time for that information to push out. So we push the button. Some people may receive it immediately, and some people may receive it a couple hours after the fact. And I do briefly want to touch back to a couple days ago. We used a new alerting feature that we gained a year or so ago. It's called iPods, or the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. And what that allows us to do is to utilize cell tower coverage to send out alerts, either in areas that are highly populated or in areas that are sparsely populated where we may not have a lot of opt-in registrants with our Humboldt Alert system. So when we used that iPod system, we were pushing out the evacuation order for this central order zone. And in our Everbridge, our Humboldt Alert system, we only had one registered contact in there. So we used the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System to target those cell towers that are out in here. And there were a lot of people who weren't in the immediate threat zone that received that threat. But for us, it was justifiable because we knew that everyone within that swath of land would get notified, regardless of only having one registrant with our system.
And there's a question regarding pre-planned evacuation routes for the community by location. I know people were very concerned about 299, especially with the one-way traffic. Can you talk about the status of 299 and other evacuation options?
So right now, 299, from what I understand, is still one-way controlled. And the best evacuation route, if we're looking anywhere up here in this northern portion, is to evacuate west towards our McKinleyville shelter that's out there. It may be more prudent for you to evacuate east if there's significant fire activity along the highway. But as we showed earlier, there's solid containment lines all along the 299 corridor where there's active fire. So I'm not as concerned with immediate threats to the highway. And right now, I would say moving towards the coast is beneficial because you're going to get some lighter smoke and get out of that affected area safely.
We have about 10 more minutes remaining. Another question that came in was about the restricted area access pass and have those been used yet for farms?
As I mentioned earlier, they have not been. If you request to use that, you have to call our office, 268-2500, and that's area code 707. Right now, because of the active fire and the conditions on the ground, we haven't received clearance from the incident management team to issue or to allow entry into those areas. But you can certainly call our office. We can give you more information, and we can explore possibilities there if people do have an issued pass and they want to seek entrance to their property.
There was a question from the media regarding illegal cultivation sites in the non-fire footprint. Do we have any reports of those sites being in that area, or is that something we're not monitoring?
So my office, the Office of Emergency Service, is not a law enforcement division. We are civilian staff that are solely here to prepare, mitigate, and respond to emergencies. If there are illegal cultivation sites in there, it's not my business. It's not something I'm tracking. My whole mission here is to make sure that we send out alerts and keep people safe.
Absolutely. Great, thank you. And then we are running low on questions here, so just a reminder that you can drop the questions in the comments. We have about 10 minutes here left. Can you talk a little bit about the preparations that go into place before a fire happens? So what is OES doing? How have we prepared for this operation?
Of course. So last year, with the onset of the August complex, working with planning and buildings GIS specialists, our public information officer, and my office, we developed preliminary countywide evacuation zones. And that allows us to target populations within the county. We create what's called a community profile, looking at structures, population size, potential resource gaps, and then potential respite areas or sheltering areas, as well as resource centers in the area. So we have a pretty good idea what the landscape is countywide, and we're currently working on contracting with a company called Zone Haven to create new zones countywide, as well as zone-specific evacuation plans that include resource areas. There's going to be information on roadblocks and what we call TCPs or traffic control points. So that's something that we're looking to in the next couple of weeks. But right now we're working off of those zones that we developed last year, as well as the zones that were created by a combination of the California Incident Management Team 5, our law enforcement partners in our office. So generally speaking, when an incident happens, we look at where the biggest activity is, and then we place our roadblocks, our traffic control points, our route information based on the trajectory of that fire as it relates to the zones and the population centers around it.
And can you just briefly talk about how these zones are determined? So is it U.S. Forest Service or the fire personnel that are asking for these zones, or are we arbitrarily placing them?
So generally speaking, we have people who are on the ground here observing active fire. We have them coupled with multi-agency coordination teams made up of law, fire, EMS, anyone who's working that fire and has eyes on it, as well as incident meteorologists that are actively monitoring the weather, current, and projected out for the next week. So the zones that are created are based on current fire behavior and projected fire behavior. So right now, when you look at this fire, and you might think, okay, well, that's mostly threatening the 299 corridor. Why is it all the way out here? Well, if we get a wind shift, or if we look at this map and see, hey, this whole thing is still active fire, and the terrain out here is really conducive to making runs uphill, we're going to project that zone out to what we know is a safe distance to keep as many residents safe as possible.
And what's the word on the PG&E power restoration within the grid that's currently down?
So as of this morning, we had a 10 a.m. collaborators call with PG&E, the incident management team, multi-agency partners, both from Trinity and Humboldt County. And due to the active fire that is still present in the interior and along these areas, we don't want those lines energized at this time because it could be potential for future fire starts, especially since we're still seeing active fire activity along this northern border of the fire. So we don't have an estimated restoration time at this point, but as we get that information, we'll make sure to put it out.
And then what can residents in the Titlow and Redwood Creek areas do, or what should they be monitoring?
So I would say your best bet for current information is to keep monitoring our Sheriff's Office Facebook page, our OES Facebook page. You can call our office, again, 268-2500. The best way to prepare, just make sure you have a bag ready, make sure that you have all the commodities that you need to keep yourself, your family safe and comfortable if you have to evacuate. And if you need further preparedness tips, you can certainly call our office and we'll walk you through what to do.
And someone just has a question about the community members who did put in some fire lines or did some clearing on properties. Did they contribute to that dramatic increase in containment, or no? What was the effect of that?
Well, I can speak to some of the challenges that we saw that day. There were some challenges with getting air resources up due to people being within the evacuation zones. I can't speak to how effective it was. I'm not on the ground, but I know that community members have a vested interest in protecting their own properties, their livelihoods, and their family. So I can't speak to the effectiveness, but I certainly understand where those community members are coming from.
And can you speak about it's okay to do that work in a warning zone?
Absolutely.
It's just not in the order zone. So you should be doing everything you can to prepare your homes now if you're in a warning or outside of a warning.
Exactly. If you're in a warning zone, do anything you can to prepare your family, your house, be ready to evacuate, and prepare your house for defensible space. But if we have an active order in place, I keep getting disoriented in my maps here because my back's turned to it. But if there's an active order in place, if you're leaving your property to get resources for fire suppression, we're not going to let you back in.
Okay, thank you. There's a question about the Google Maps, circling back to that. Someone was worried that anyone could put anything on that, and that's not really the case. So why are we using Google? What's the benefits to that?
The benefit to Google for us is we can zoom in really close and see which roads we're talking about. A lot of the people working these incident management teams or working on the ground aren't necessarily from the community that's affected. So it allows them to go in, zoom in, get really familiar with the area. And then from a public facing standpoint, being able to go in, punch in your address and see where you are in relation to the layers that we put in this map. I see that as really effective. But if there are challenges with that, I'm certainly open to feedback. And if you have questions, concerns, you can call us.
And we have about 5 more minutes left. Staying on the Google Map topic, we have seen a lot of questions over the past few days about why we don't see Trinity County evacuations or surrounding counties. Can you just explain that briefly?
Yeah, so our jurisdiction starts and ends at the county line, right? We can't provide mapping features for Trinity County. That's their purview, their jurisdiction. And sometimes there's challenges for when that information comes out, because they have a different OES team, they have a different sheriff's office team that's coordinating their public information efforts. So to get the best information for Trinity County, I believe they're posting their information on the Trinity County Sheriff's Office Facebook page. And you can get zone descriptions from their evacuation orders, their warning zones. But from a liability standpoint, I'm not comfortable with, and I can't put their zones up on our page because it could be changing out of sync with what ours are doing.
Thanks. And we're going to have 2 more questions here, and then we'll pass it over to Supervisor Madrone for some closing. Oh, Supervisor Madrone has something to say right now, so I'm going to throw him up here. You're live, Supervisor.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I just wanted to encourage people to think about long-term. Right now, we're in the heat of the fire, as they say, right? But long-term, our volunteer fire departments are desperate for new members. Please get in touch with the Willow Creek Volunteer Fire Department. We also have a Fire Safe Council who is actively involved with the chipper, going around the community helping people. So if you're not in a mandatory evacuation zone, they may be able to help you with some of that. You need to call them and make an appointment. Somebody had asked, where can they take their green waste in Willow Creek? And I would say contact the Fire Safe Council to see if you can get some help with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we have 2 more questions here. There is a question regarding, are we expecting the fire to cross the South Fork? I believe there's containment lines there.
So right now, the South Fork is pretty well protected. This solid black line, typically what we'll see is, I mean, for an example, if you look over here on the western side, it may be hard to see in the video, there's kind of this gray area with a bunch of little X's here, and you see the same up here. So typically what we see with these incident maps is you'll get those dozer lines or those kind of gray X's along the area that they're trying to get containment on. And once they're comfortable with the containment and they consider that cold or what they call black, what they call a black line, that's a pretty solid containment. So right now, I'm not saying there's zero possibility. There's never 100% certainty in anything. But right now, the fire team is pretty confident that South Fork is looking good.
And then just the final question we have here, we've got about 2 minutes left, is about Humboldt Alert. And someone wants to know, please confirm if Humboldt Alert signups work to alert people.
So the Humboldt Alert signups are the best way for you to get alerted. You can sign up at humboldtgov.org/alerts, or you can call our office at 268-2500, and we can have someone walk you through that registration process. That is the first and best way for you to get notified, assuming that you have coverage in your area. And if you don't get that notification, one of the reasons that we send our deputies out into this area is to do what we call door knock evacuations, where they'll go and physically knock on your doors. Or today, you may have seen that we launched a new high-low siren program. If you hear a high-low siren, it's kind of that standard European siren. I demonstrated it for you right now with my mouth, but no one wants to hear that. That's a good way for you to know that your area is under immediate evacuation order as well. So listen for that siren, look for your Humboldt alerts, and again, register at humboldtgov.org/alerts.
Okay, great. And Supervisor Madrone, do you have any closing thoughts to share?
Well, somebody was asking the question about if I join the volunteer fire department, will I be able to cross into evacuated areas? So there's a process. You join the department, you need to get training, you have to have the proper equipment. And my understanding is that when fires are happening, the volunteer fire departments are a big part of that effort in helping. But you've got to go through that process. You can't just go to the department, say, I'll sign up, and then suddenly you're going to be into the fire. There's training and other safety things to do. But again, everybody be safe, be prepared. And thank you, Ryan, for a good presentation for the community.
Thank you so much, Supervisor.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us today. We'll continue to provide updates via social media and our press releases as we gain more information on the incident. In the meantime, if you didn't have a chance to ask the questions that you wanted to during this, you can call our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center at 268-2500, and we'll be able to address any questions you may have. But thank you all for watching today.